Difficult too. So, and then can you talk a little bit about when you got the phone call from the school or from the day school about your child and what that was like?
Absolute horror. I had what we call in the South a tunnel park. I was at work preparing for a trial, which was set for the next day, and got the call and started crying, of course, immediately, and realized I had to get it together. And all of this took place in what felt like probably 20 minutes, but in reality it was probably 20 seconds. Turned to my law partner and said, "See you, bye," grabbed my keys, hit the door, turned on my hazard lights, and started driving like a maniac to the day school, which luckily was, took me about 2.5 minutes to get there. It is close to our office, and I actually beat the ambulance. I saw the ambulance coming in on the other side of the school when I got there. Luckily, our fire trucks were dispatched as well as ambulances where I live, and the fire station was about halfway between where I was working and the day school, so they were there. They already had him. The EMT saw me running in the building, and they met me at the door. The director said, "It's okay, we've got him, he's fine." My son is absolutely obsessed with airplanes, and luckily he had one in his little cubby that morning. And so after the injection, they thought to get his airplane, and I got to him, and he was sitting up. He was playing with his airplane, or actually, he wasn't sitting up. He was still laying on the counter because I had instructed them to keep him down if they could. Luckily, the epi worked, and he was fine, and we got on the ambulance, and they took their time in getting his vitals and transported us to the emergency room, where I felt like I knew more than the ER doctor did.
When exactly? I know you mentioned earlier. How long ago was it? It said a year almost.
It was July 28th.
Isn't it interesting? It's so interesting to me talking to moms almost weekly about their child's first reaction, where it required, where it was an anaphylactic reaction, where they, I remember as well the exact date, time of the day, what my son was wearing. And it's amazing the recollection of that day and the fine details that we remember. And it gives me chills to hear your story. It's just, it's so sad to think that you could have lost your son. It's just horrible.
I think that's a thought that we all have every day.
When you drive off, I've often expressed to other, parents at the school, they drive off, crank their music, and, go off to do whatever. And I think us moms and I've mentioned this before to our team, but we turn our ringers on high, and we're waiting for that phone call, hoping that it doesn't happen, and hoping that all the safety measures we put into place are followed. So I'm so glad that that had a good outcome. And hopefully he's okay after that experience. I'm hoping a lot of these kids are so resilient. They just sort of adjust. So how's your son, do you think, doing from that, Amelia?
He still remembers the injection. He remembers the whole event. But I don't feel that it's had any real negative impact on him. If anything else, I think it makes him a little bit more cautious of possibly handling things that I don't feel are safe, or asking for a bite of food that's unsafe that someone else may have. In Mississippi especially, and I'm sure other southern states as well, deviled eggs are very common at all gatherings, especially in the summer with picnics or holidays with extended family. And deviled eggs are my arch nemesis at this point.
Yeah.
I can remember my mother-in-law, shortly after Robert was diagnosed, eating a deviled egg, and without thinking, and I don't hold any fault against her at all, especially not if she listens to this. But nobody thought about it at that time. We were so new to the diagnosis. She had a deviled egg and had Robert in her lap, and she put her hand on his leg, and within seconds, he had a handprint welt on his leg, just from the contact. So deviled eggs are an absolute no-no with us, of course, and the family still insists on having them at certain holidays, and Robert steers clear of them. All you have to say is, Robert, you might have, those aren't safe. And he'll say, oh, if I could have to have my egg again, I need to go stand over there. And I said, yes, babe. Don't touch it. Everybody's super vigilant about washing their hands. And as you were saying earlier, talking about us being scared of dropping our children off, to leave them for the day in someone else's care, that is a fear that I still have. But I also want, especially newly diagnosed parents, to know that I am much more secure in leaving him there now, especially after his reaction, knowing that they know what to do.
Yes, and definitely.
After his reaction, the day school is even more vigilant than they were, because they have seen the toll it takes on Robert and us and them. The teachers were walking on eggshells for 2 weeks before they realized that it was an accident.
Yeah.
It was some accidental exposure. We still have never been able to pinpoint what it was. They've had to change a lot of the things that they were doing in the use of his room with church activities, because we believe that's where the allergen was introduced. And so they have. And, I think it was a wake-up call for everybody, but it is reassuring to look back on it and know that they know what to do and know how to handle a situation, and that they're looking out for the best interest of my child.
So I guess, the takeaway message from that is that if your child is out of your care, then the place that you're dropping them, whether it's a home or a day school or wherever, needs to have some sort of training regarding food allergies and anaphylaxis, the signs and symptoms of an anaphylactic reaction, and they know how to treat it. Or else I wouldn't feel comfortable dropping our child there. So now,
absolutely, we have seen not only in Robert's experience but other recent experience that I've had that training does work. Training is extremely important when you leave your child in someone else's care.
And we can put up on our Facebook page, for those listening, some different options for getting training to your schools. So now I'm going to turn it over, unless you had something else, Amelia, to Erica, if you're still with us.
I'm still here.
Sitting patiently.
I'm gathering myself after hearing that. It just brings back so many memories, and
it's
brings a little tears to my eyes.
And it's an anniversary date, isn't it? Every year it's an anniversary date. We think back to that, time. Unfortunately, my son had his first anaphylactic reaction the day after his first birthday. So, of course, every year around birthday time, you're thinking it brings it back. So Amelia's getting close to her 1 year anniversary. And so I wanted to turn it over to you now to talk a little bit about when you first suspected food allergies, or if you had anaphylaxis in your child and when that occurred, and just similar to what Amelia shared, some of the feelings around that parents might be able to listen to and to relate to, which is, like I said, different than reading it in a book. It sort of gives a voice to it. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. And please bear with me, because every time I talk about this, it seems to bring a little bit of tears to my eyes. He had his first, I would say, reaction that we did not actually know about the first reaction. He was about 6 months old when he had his first asthmatic attack. He had caught what they thought was pneumonia, and we were in the hospital with him in the emergency room, and there he couldn't breathe, and I was nursing him. So we didn't have any idea. We just thought he had caught a cold, and we took him into the emergency room. And we took him to a med point because he couldn't breathe. They were doing the breathing treatments, trying to take the breathing test for him, and that's when they came out and said, he has pneumonia, and, instantly I'm freaking out. So we get him to the emergency room, and they start him on that. So that would be our first asthmatic. They did not diagnose him with anything at that point.
So 6 months, you said?
When he was 6 months old,
okay.
Yes. And they didn't diagnose him with any.
He
Sorry.
sensed you were talking about him.
I'm sorry?
He sensed you were talking about him.
um,
No, you know what, you guys? Part of what I'm saying with these audio files is that it's a genuine approach to managing anaphylaxis and managing as a mom. And, you know, I think it's great that, you know, it's real. So I don't even mind. You know what I'm saying? It's perfect that he's there too. So
they're having a little battle over a car.
Yeah.
Little battle over a car.
So you had
6 months.
6 months old. They think
he was 6
it's
months old, and we had never had any diagnosis of any kind. They basically at that point they told us he had pneumonia. We get him to the hospital, and they said that he had bronchitis, and they put him on they ordered us a breathing machine. So at 6 months old, he'd already started to have a breathing machine for his asthma. But we had no indication as to why it was coming on, or if it was something, because I was nursing, so it wasn't like he was eating regular food already at this point. His first anaphylactic reaction happened when he was just over a year old. His birthday is August 12th, so this happened on August 23rd. So he was just a little over a year old, and I was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and of course he's sitting there, and I give him a bite of it. It took less than 2 minutes, if that. He was completely covered in hives. It looked like, one way I can describe it is it looked like he had been bitten by a mosquito over 100 times all over his body. His lips were swelling up. And I don't know what made me think to give him Benadryl, but I did. And I think it's because when he was younger, he had a reaction to cats, and the doctor said we could give him some Benadryl, and we did. So I jumped on the phone. At this point, I'm still like, I don't really know what this is. I've never seen somebody react to a food allergy or anything at this time, at this point. So I call my doctor, and I'm waiting on the phone, and I'm like, forget this. At this point, his nose is running. He's starting to cough, and I had given him that Benadryl, and I just got him in the car and drove him to the hospital. Well, in the back seat, he's over there. He's passing out. He's coughing. He's got drool. Sorry.
I know, Erica. It's so tough. I mean, it's just he made it though.
Yes, I got him to the hospital, and by the time I got up there, he was turning blue. His feet were turning blue. His back was turning blue. All I had to say was, he ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they a bite of it. They picked him up, scooped him up, like a flock of seagulls, and swooped him up out of there, and EpiPenned him. And they waited, and when they gave him some Benadryl again, they waited. About 20 minutes later, his feet were still blue, so they had to do it again. Then I had to go by myself. My husband was en route. I called him on the way there, so I was there by myself when all this was happening. And I was 2 months pregnant also at the time, so it was a little over-anxiety. Everything was just happening all at once. And third time around, they had to give him a third EpiPen shot within, it might have been maybe an hour later or so, but 3 EpiPens later, and then he was admitted to the intensive care unit overnight. He monitored, and because he kept reacting every time the EpiPen would wear off, but by the third one, he was reacting better to it.
Gosh.
And they kept him overnight. They released him the next, early afternoon the next day, and the emergency room doctor just flat out told me, he's like, if your son ever eats a peanut again, or comes in contact with any kind of nuts or walnuts or anything, he's going to die. And that was exactly his exact words, he's going to die. And that just hit me like a brick wall. Because my child could die.
So it was so violent. That reaction.
No, everything happened so fast. It was just,